Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Welcome to Almost Major, a podcast where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. We are still on Artisan, and today we're talking about The Way of the Gun from 2000. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Ryan Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And we have a super special guest from the New World Pictures podcast. It is Ryan Gowland. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we had to, because you pretty much run in the same corners as us as far as covering mini majors, so had to cross the pods. Yeah. Can you tell it's a very obvious concept, but can you tell the listeners about your podcast, about what all you do?
Yeah, we basically, much like you guys are doing with Artisan, we're watching every movie released by New World Pictures. We also are talking, we have episodes where we talk to some of the people behind the scenes who made the movies, either directed them or edited them. We've talked to Tony Randall, Peter Atkins of Hellraiser 2.
Oh,
we've
awesome.
talked to...
Nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. We talked to Patrick Leberteau, who was in Heathers. We talked to a bunch of people. Courtney Gaines of Children of the Corn. We've talked to Alan Holzman a bunch about working on Battle Beyond the Stars, where he was the editor, and also the 3 movies he directed for New World Pictures: Forbidden World, Grunt the Wrestling movie, and Out of Control. So we watch all those movies. We also have bonus episodes where we talk about newer movies we've watched, and we've started a new series called Nearly New World. So we also are covering movies that New World almost put out or could have put out.
Oh, awesome.
So we're talking about a whole lot of stuff. So it's a great time. I co-host it with my brother and my wife, and it's a great time. So nice. We're having a lot of fun, and hopefully people will check it out.
Hell yeah. I recommend it. So definitely check it out. It's definitely very similar to our type of stuff. So if you like us, go on over there and listen. But today we were talking about The Way of the Gun from 2000. Like I said, this released in the U.S. September 8th, 2000. That was one day before my 8th birthday, so that's cool. Opened in 1,515 theaters at number 9. The budget on this is $8.5 million. Opening weekend made $2.1 million, domestic gross of $6 million, and an overall gross of $13 million. The top 5 films that weekend were The Watcher, the movie that Keanu Reeves was forced to star in, Nurse Betty, Bring It On, The Cell, and Space Cowboys.
Wow. Yeah, you can't beat Space Cowboys. That was just a bad job by Artisan putting it out on that weekend.
Yeah, it was just like Nurse Betty, Way of the Gun.
Do I see this crime film, or do I see these old guys going to space? I mean, I think the decision's made.
I rewatched The Cell not too long ago because I hadn't seen it in forever, and I was just like, y'all decided to put this out. This is a batshit movie. It doesn't work, but it's pretty wild, and you put it out, and we're just like, people will see it because of Jennifer Lopez, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, the fuck is this? Why is Vince Vaughn in this?
Yeah, it's simultaneously gorgeous and disgusting at the same time. I was gonna say we had a midnight right before the pandemic started. We had a midnight showing of The Cell where we got people to come and do cell drag, which was actually pretty amazing. Oh. It was awesome.
What? Okay.
They had this amazing drag queen. Their name is Magenta with a J. They had like the purple curtains like going from both walls and stuff. It was awesome.
Okay, but who dressed up as the horse that gets divided into like 20 pieces?
Oh, they didn't do that.
Yeah, I noticed this from listening to This Had Oscar Buzz. It's like, the gay community loves The Sale, and I watched the movie like again, and I was just like, "This movie's like disgusting." Like, what? I don't get it.
J-Lo in those amazing outfits.
And, okay, if that's the case, why doesn't the gay community prop up Anaconda? That's all I'm saying. Charlie, as our gay ambassador of the pod, you have to have a talk. No. Okay.
I have to assume. I mean, I haven't seen Anaconda, much to your disappointment, Kevin. Although I do have it on my Plex. I'm assuming that, John, what's his name in it?
Voight.
Jesus, I can't. Yeah, John Voight's in it.
Yeah.
That's not John Voight's not a friend of the gay community.
That's true, but
Nor
Owen
the
Wilson?
Anaconda community. So
It's true. It's true. He tried to be, but you'll figure it out. Don't worry. Anyways, The Watcher. I'm gonna watch that garbage. Bryden, I think you hipped it to me that Keanu Reeves dances to Dragula by Rob Zombie in that movie, and I was like, I have to watch it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that scene, but I think the B-side did an episode on Marissa Tomei, who's also in that movie, and they said like, oh yeah, like the highlight of the movie is like Keanu dancing to Dragula, and they were like,
Also,
yeah.
I part of me wants to watch it because Keanu Reeves serial killer, trashy movie. Also,
Oh, yeah.
Keanu Reeves sad. So that kind of takes the fun away from it for me.
Oh yeah. And if you look at the poster, like his name is like stretched out like at the very bottom. It's just like and like his assistant at the time forged his signature so he would star in it. It's just really wild stuff.
Wasn't The Matrix like a year before? Like, let Keanu just fucking live his life. Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
It's also a funny Ebert and Roper review where if you look it up, I think it's on that website where they have the archival footage of all of their episodes, and like Roper just goes, I think it's a fun popcorn movie, and Roger goes, well, our next movie is, and he stops and goes, a popcorn movie? That's not good enough. It should be good enough so you don't have to eat popcorn. Like
Ebert and Scold mode is always very fun.
My allergies are going nuts right now, so if I sound like a wheezing Darth Vader, I'm very sorry, folks.
Everyone's are. You're fine.
Yeah. Number one song in the U.S. this week is Doesn't Really Matter by Janet Jackson. Once again, this is like 3 episodes in a row where Janet Jackson's number one. Number one song in Canada this week is Bent by Matchbox 20. I don't know how Canada got B-sides from Matchbox 20 and not just 3 a.m., but sure.
How many weeks of this Janet Jackson number one track is it going to result in us? Is going to have to result in us doing Nutty Professor 2: The Clumps? I'm sure that was also number one, whatever that song was at some point for one movie.
I don't know. I think was that 2000 or 2001?
That was 2000.
Okay.
That was also...
Thank God it's Universal. It's too major for us,
Oh.
so we can't do it.
I specifically remember renting the first movie with my family, and my family's like, oh, this is actually kind of delightful and funny, and then we watched the second one all together, and it was one of those where you could just... My parents were just so disgusted, and they were just like, why did we let our children watch this? I mean, it's a PG-13 movie with hamster rape in it, for Christ's sakes. It's a terrible movie.
I mean, the 2000s were different.
It's not. This is not a visual medium, but you should have all just seen Bryden's face when I told him there is hamster rape in this movie.
I remember that was one of the first unrated movies, like back in the day. I forgot to bring that up, but yeah, I remember that and being like, oh man, I gotta see it. I'm 8 years old, and what does this mean?
I mean, it makes sense. There's lots of jokes about, Eddie Murphy, Grandma Eddie Murphy assaults Eddie Murphy. What's the evil version of Eddie Murphy in that movie?
Oh God, I forget.
Or whatever. I don't know.
Something like that.
It's been like 22 years since I've seen that piece of shit. I don't know. Eddie Murphy assaults himself. If that sounds like comedy to you, by all means.
I think that just cancels it out, honestly. The Way of the Gun is about... Well, let me just read this Google plot description because it's insane. Let me put on my trailer voice. No, I'm not, but they make no excuses. They don't ask for forgiveness. Their story is without compromise, brutal and simple. For contemporary desperados Parker and associate Longburr, crime means survival at any cost. Their impromptu plan to kidnap surrogate mother Robin, just weeks from delivering the son of Hale and Francesca Cheduk, which is the worst name ever, seems to be a fast way to cash in on a fat ransom and head for the border. But their haste does not indeed make waste.
It sounds like something those characters would have written them, like saying they didn't ask for forgiveness or whatever.
It kind of sounds like the Boondock Saints wrote that plot synopsis.
It makes it, yeah. I read that and I was just like, man, this is a bit much. Usually it's just the simple plot you could have just done with those last 2 sentences. But once I read the haste does indeed make waste, I was like, okay. Written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Prior to this, he won the Best Original Screenplay for The Usual Suspects in 1995. This is his directorial debut. After this, he wrote Valkyrie in 2008, which starts his partnership with Tom Cruise. Created a television show called Persons Unknown in 2010. It has written and directed the past 2 Mission Impossible films and has 2 more in the can that he also wrote and direct, which I cannot wait for.
And but he also did Jack Reacher,
Yeah,
which
did
was
Jack Reacher as well. Yeah,
wonderful.
That's right. Of course, yes. Now that I've seen this, I have to watch that to, I got to finish the McQuarrie filmography. We all have to. Starring Ryan Phillippe, my favorite person in the world, as Mr. Parker. Hi, everybody. Kevin here. I'm editing the pod right now, and I just wanted to come in and say something real quick. I didn't know until after this pod that allegedly Ryan Phillippe is a pretty shit dude. I found out that he had a lawsuit filed against him alleging that he abused an ex-girlfriend along with other instances of harassment. So naturally, this episode has me somewhat facetiously praising him because I've always kind of enjoyed him, even though he's kind of, one note, but still. But because I didn't know this prior to the recording of this, I could have just edited out the parts of me saying that, but I'm lazy. So back to the pod. Prior to this, of course, I Know What You Did Last Summer in 1997, and here's where I'll insert the clip of, "We take this to our grave, say it!"
We take this to our grave! Let me hear it! Let it go, Barry! You fucking say it.
I also rewatched that, and that movie sucks. For the first time in like 20 years.
It's not good. I never understood why that movie has such a following. It wasn't good when I was a teenager, and it sucks even more now. It's not good.
He's the only, somewhat enjoyable part, and somewhat MSG, but really it's, that movie's 2 hours long for no reason. He was also in 54 in 1998, and unfortunately that's a really bad movie, but I kind of blame that on the Weinstein of it all. But I did watch the director's cut, and it's honestly not that much better, so I think regardless. But Cruel Intentions in 1999, hell yeah. After this, Antitrust in 2001, which I still need to watch. Crash in 2004, let's move on. And The Lead on the Shooter TV show based on the movie, which ran from 2016 to 2018, which I did not even know he did.
I was also going to say, he was on an ABC show called Big Sky, which I think David E. Kelly co-created or whatever. But
wow.
And he was on the posters and everything, but they literally kill his character at the end of the pilot episode. It's always really funny. It's he's in all the marketing materials where I'm thinking, so what happens to his character? And it's shot in the head at the end of the pilot.
I remember hearing about that. Also, I know we don't want to talk about Crash at all, but is he the only honest depiction of racism in that movie?
I don't know.
where
when I said let's move on, I literally mean let's move
cut
on.
That out. Cut that out.
Most recently he was in One Shot. Which is a great application. It's a great use of him as an actor because he plays a character that you just want to punch in the face. So it's a really perfect Ryan Phillippe role.
Oh, much like in this movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
boy,
indeed.
Howdy. And how could I forget? He played the garbage-picking, sax-blazing dad in Wish Upon in 2017. Hell yeah. That's my movie I push to people. They're like, what's a good movie? I'm like, I don't have any good recommendations. I just have Wish Upon. I'm sorry. Benicio del Toro as Harold Longbird. Prior to this, also in The Usual Suspects in 1995. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 1998. After this, wins an Oscar for Traffic in 2001 and nominated for another for 21 Grams in 2003. Played Che Guevara in the 2-part epic Che in 2008 and Sicario in 2015. Juliette Lewis as Robin. Prior to this, nominated for an Oscar for Cape Fear in 1991, Natural Born Killers in 1994, and also in From Dusk Till Dawn in 1996, which I just rewatched, and it fucking rules.
And Strange Days.
Oh,
she was
yeah,
great in
of course.
Yeah,
yes,
really
of
good.
course. Yes. After this, in Cold Creek Manor in 2003. I'm gonna have to watch it and I can't wait. Whip It in 2009 and a regular in Yellow's Jackets as per last year.
She's so good in that.
Yes, she's great.
She is really good in that, yeah.
And I mean, I picked Taye Diggs, but it could have been, I feel like the fourth person in this movie is 12 different people, but Taye Diggs as Jeffers, prior to this, had a hell of a 1999 with House on Haunted Hill, Go, The Wood, and The Best Man. After this, Brown Sugar in 2002, Malibu's Most Wanted in 2003, hell yeah, saw it in theaters, and on Private Practice from 2007 to 2013. It also stars, good lord, friend of the pod, Nikki Cat. Who else?
James Caan, Jeffrey Lewis,
Juliette Lewis's dad, which I did not know until a week ago, and I was like, of course, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Scott Wilson, who was a famous character actor, and
he was in The Walking Dead.
Yes, that's one of the last things he did.
Yeah.
He's passed away now, but a great
Yeah.
actor. And then Dylan Cussman, who probably one of his more prominent roles is playing one of the stuck-up kids in Dead Poet Society, who rats everyone out at the end.
Oh,
Cameron.
Yeah.
His name, character's name, Cameron.
that's right.
He also wrote the 2017 Mummy, which everyone loves and remembers so fondly.
With Christopher McQuarrie, they both came
Yep.
in and did a rewrite on that. So
Yeah.
he's been a friend of McQuarrie's for a long time, and was cast at the very last second in this.
It's very funny to me that his character not only gets Doctor in front of his name, but a first and last name, where so many people just have first names.
Dr. Painter.
Dr. Alan
Yeah.
Painter.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
did not even know that Philippi and Del Toro had names until I looked it up. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't remember them even saying like, oh, we have to get Mr. Parker. They're just like that guy.
It's the opening voiceover right after they get the shit kicked out of them. They say, for the record, my associate's name are Mr. Parker and Mr. Lamba. That's his voiceover.
I believe those are the real names of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I believe
Yeah.
that's where they got
Yeah.
the
Let us also
inspiration.
not forget that Sarah Silverman is in this movie as, quote, raving bitch, and there's another person credited, Irene Santiago, as, quote, sloppy prostitute.
Okay.
Clearly a film written by someone who thought very hard about what they're...
Listen. Yeah, I saw the Sarah Silverman one, but not the other one. I hope they weren't like, yes, I'm here auditioning for a raging bitch. Okay, whenever you're ready,
I'm sure it's not on Sarah Silverman's resume anymore. Jesus.
Yeah, no. Trivia.
Maybe in the reel, though. Never know. Could be in the reel.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, her just 20-second tirade of just McQuarrie typing in every curse word and racial slur and all this shit. I'm sure that's on her reel.
That's on so many supercuts I saw when I was a kid, where I would just watch the greatest movie insults ever, and it would just be that would be on in the reel. I'm like, what is this movie with all this horrible language?
Oh my god. Trivia. The unusual car chase scenes after the kidnapping were Benicio del Toro's idea. He suggested this to McQuarrie after watching Cops, where a couple of criminals did the same thing where cops were chasing them.
Yep.
Just thinking about Del Toro watching Cops in between filming this and traffic is pretty cool. McQuarrie's brother, a U.S. Navy SEAL, was the technical advisor for the gunfight scenes, hence the realism of coordinated movements, use of cover, and room clearing. By accident, Ryan Phillippe punched Sarah Silverman in the opening scene. She got knocked out, and when she woke up, he was standing over her in tears. The makeup department used fake blood, and the huge lump on her chin was a continuity bonus. Phillippe apologized for a week.
Yeah.
What can you do?
I mean, that scene also has a weird bit where, according to the commentary, that was McQuarrie got that idea from when he there were some people who were getting mad at him at the park, and he said his friend asked oh, what would we do if things turned violent? And McQuarrie's reply was simple and straightforward: just run into the crowd as they're coming toward us and start punching the women as hard as you can. His argument was that while he and his friend would still be beaten down, it's the other guys who'd be the real losers, as they'd have to go home after with the women. Which is
cool.
I mean, that is kind of the button the movie ends on. It's Silverman's crying to her boyfriend, and the boyfriend is are we supposed to the boy? Oh, that poor guy. He has to listen to that suffering and everything.
Man, yeah.
It made me feel so bad for Sarah Silverman. I know we're gonna get into this scene later, but Jesus.
Right.
And
yeah.
One other trivia.
And now I feel worse. Oh, sorry.
No. And one other trivia bit too is the scene where they're clearing out the brothel, and all the women are running out, and Del Toro smacks one of the women on the bottom. That was not a planned moment. McQuarrie told Del Toro not to do it and didn't tell the other actress, and she was not happy about that.
Neat.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I think I saw that. Yeah, as well. Also we were talking about Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. The final shootout is the same location where the final shootout in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid occurred. So,
Sick.
McQuarrie, I assume, is a big fan. Also, McQuarrie views the film as an allegory for independent filmmaking, from the leads winding up bloodied and bruised to watching somebody else leave with the money. Quote, "That's filmmaking." Shut up.
I like him a lot as a director, and I like some of his writing, but reading some of it, talking about this movie and some of the dialogue in this movie, I'm like, you can maybe cut this down a little bit, please.
There's some indefensible stuff in here.
Yeah, it definitely reads of first movie script. Also, Tarantino's blood is still in the air type of thing, you know.
What would you say qualifies you as a donor?
I would say I am a fairly good-looking man, physically fit, stable.
I've never killed a man. I beg your pardon?
It's just one of those days.
For the record, I'll call myself Mr. Parker. My associate will be Mr. Longbow. At some point, it became clear to us that our path had been chosen, and we had nothing to offer the world. So we stepped off the path and went looking for the fortune that we knew was looking for us.
It's just one of those days.
And here was the thing. The longest distance between 2 points is a kidnapper and his money. But we were through jerking around.
What I heard was you ready to put a woman's life at risk for money.
Not money. $15 million. $15 million.
$15 million.
You are here because you were for sale, and you will do as you are told.
You just bring me back my baby.
Initial thoughts. Ryan, as our guest, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. My initial thoughts. Well, first of all, by the way, I did suggest this movie, and it's because I did see it in the theater. Excited as I was, as a big fan of The Usual Suspects. And also because I was living in the Bay Area at the time, and that's where Dylan Cussman went to school. He went to school at Berkeley, and he was in a theater company that I was also in. However, our time did not cross over, so he had left by the time I joined. So there's a lot of stories about him that I heard from everybody in the theater company, and even McQuarrie talks about it in the commentary, where he mentions that he used to drive up to see him in all these shows, including Henry V, which was a show that I heard a lot of stories about Dylan Cussman in. But anyway, and I also knew him from Dead Poet Society, so I was super ready for this movie. That said, this is a kind of a Shaggy Dog movie, and I've been championing this thing for a long time, but it is inarguably imperfect. You know, it is got, but that's, it's kind of, there's a lot that I love, and I think McQuarrie is going for like a real 70s crime film before that was in vogue and people thought that was a cool thing to do. And it's filled with complicated and flawed characters, which, I mean, he was definitely doing on purpose. And in fact, I'm not 100%. He wants us to like almost any of them, except for maybe Juliette Lewis and James Caan. Maybe. Those are the most likely people in the whole film. The story really lacks any kind of hero. Perhaps a hero reveals themselves by the end. I don't know. It really is. I think that's kind of up to the individual, whoever you think. McQuarrie mentions who he thinks is the hero of the story, and I was like, nope.
Nicky Cat?
In the commentary. Yeah. Nicky Cat would have been, I would have gone with that one. He actually says Dr. Painter, Dr. Alan Painter is the hero of the film. Not in my book, but okay.
Sure.
I guess. I don't know.
Again, I'm not worried about what he thinks. I think it's really more up to the individual. So I'm like, that's what he said. Okay, great. That's not what I saw, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I also think this is him at his most nihilistic, and it's his least polished work for sure. And I think he would admit to all of this too. Like he knows. I think a lot of the quotes that sometimes you're getting from him about this movie are largely him in defense of this movie, because it was, you know, it did okay. It didn't do great, the box office, and so he kind of had to end up defending a lot of it. And I know McQuarrie would hate the comparisons, but this is obviously, to me, more of an ode to, or a love letter to Sam Peckinpah. Not just like the ending, which is like, seems to be right out of the Wild Bunch, but also like Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia or The Killer Elite, or some of those movies that he did that I feel like he's taken a lot of pages from. Yeah, and it's a very angry movie. I think it took him years to make after Usual Suspects. They want him to make movies, but not letting him make his movie. So Del Toro convinced him and said, make a crime movie. And so a lot of the opening of the movie he wrote just in anger over the situation that he had been in Hollywood. And so that's why I think we get such an angry opening to this film. It's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Bryden?
Yeah, so I saw this, I think, like 7 years ago, and it was like around the time, I think Jack Reacher I'd already seen at that point, and was like, oh, like, so, like, what did this guy do beforehand? Like, why was there, like, a big gap? And as I said also a few minutes earlier, like, I sort of knew of this movie's reputation. Like the opening scene is kind of infamous for just like how insane a note it is to start the movie off of, with like just the slew of profanity, like, you know, coming out of the character's mouths and everything. So I was familiar with that, and then just seeing like, well, what's the rest of the movie like? I didn't like it at the time. I don't know exactly why. I think I watched it over like several days, so that was maybe like a bad way to watch the movie. But so I watched it this afternoon. I liked it a lot better than I did like when I was like 16. But it is, I think it's better as a showcase for him as a director than it is than as a writer. I feel like his writing, especially when he's trying to be funny, I feel like it's like a little too try hard. Where like with like some of the smug humor, with like the whole like opening scene at the sperm bank where like Ryan Phillippe's going on like the homophobic rant, and like, you know, some of like the dialogue, I'm just like, it's like the alliteration is like, or like he says LA is like a mecca of homosexual migration, and there's like some sort of like other line where it's like alliteration about like there's some line that James Caan has, I can't remember, where it's like a bunch of like alliterations where he's talking about adjudicating or whatever. And it's like, okay, these are a lot of like big words that like seem clever when you're putting them together, but it's like it seems like you're flexing a little too hard to be clever here. And so that's like the thing that kind of like rubs me the wrong way. And I feel like there's a few too many threads like that are like a little too convoluted with the plot, where I'm like thinking, wait, so like what's Tay Diggs' involvement with like the woman who wants the child with the surrogate mom? I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. That seems like it's a little like undercooked. But just like
they're
direction,
seeing each other, they're dating behind the scenes.
Yeah,
like a couple of little snakes.
Yeah,
a couple of snakes.
Yeah. But like direction wise, I think this is just like pretty impeccable. I mean, like some of the set pieces in this are just beautifully directed. I mean, I love McQuarrie. He does this a lot in his movies where like it's like a little thing, but like the fact that he doesn't have a lot of music during like when the action's actually happening, how he will let the like just the deafening noise of like the gunshots like whizzing through concrete, and like the dust flying, and like the broken glass, and the characters screaming, like that stuff, like it's really tactile. Like, I mean, especially at the end of the movie when like Philippe leaps into the fountain and like gets the bottle stuck, and like you like hold on him like trying to pull it out. It's like really, like I really do like that there is like sort of like tactile consequences to like the violence in the movie that really lends like a real punch. And really interestingly paced too. I mean, the slow car chase like through the alleyways, or like they're hopping out, and like, you know, it seems like it's speeding up and then it slows down again. That seems like something that he's returned to in subsequent movies. Like Jack Reacher has a car chase where like it's like kind of like ramps up at the start, and then like there's like a long stretch where it's just like kind of like the car's like slowly creeping through an alleyway. So like he's really cool at like, you know, the sort of roller coaster of pacing with like those action scenes. And I do like how you keep getting like hints throughout the movie that like it's like the movie is like just about to give its characters like a sort of bit of humanity and like possibly redeem them, and then like at the last second it keeps pulling them back from the edge where it's like, nope, they're gonna make the wrong choice and things are gonna end badly for them. And I like that the movie commits to that the whole way through. So yeah, I agree with you, Ryan, that this movie is definitely flawed, but I think as a showcase for directing, it's like this is the kind of movie where I'm thinking you could like tamp down the writing a little bit, but like direction wise, this guy definitely had chops like, from the start.
For McQuarrie, I think his like Achilles heel might be comedy. Like it's just not, and you can see it. It's subsequent movies he does. It's not. You don't think of like, remember that hilarious joke in, you know, Mission Impossible? Like it doesn't. That's not really like his and the way he makes the Mission Impossible movies are just so different than what he's doing here too.
Yeah.
Because
phenomenal.
That's just crazy how he's coming up with set pieces and then just like quickly putting together scenes the night before. It's crazy how he's making movies now. But this movie, like definitely the time he tries to go for humor, and really the time he tries to go for that tough talk, is where the movie kind of like, it's like, and I have to say some of that might also be on Ryan Phillippe too. I mean, not to say that those lines are particularly great, especially the homophobic language you talked about, which I had kind of forgotten about. But I'm like, he wrote that part for someone else, and Ryan Phillippe actually really worked hard to become part to get this role.
I read this
he wanted
as well,
it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but they cast him. He and Del Toro cast him on a coin flip.
Yeah.
Oh no shit.
And
who
handed.
was the other? Who was the
I
other
don't know.
person?
He didn't say. But he said he handed Phillippe. I read an interview with McQuarrie, and he said he handed Phillippe like a silver $1 coin or whatever. And he just handed it to him. And then, like, while they were making the movie, he was like, "Why did you give me this coin?" He was like, "That's why you're in the movie. Because we did a coin flip and you're in."
So it's not because you actually wanted me. You just left it to chance. Cool. I feel good.
Yeah.
It's the Anton Chigurh method,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. Sort of negging him a little bit to try to get out this performance. But, like, I know that he said that they talked to McConaughey and they talked to Matt Dillon, which would have made sense at the time anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if either one of those two would have been that great either in my book. But Philippi definitely, especially in that early scene, is just like a kid trying to prove to his parents that he's like a tough guy. And it's
I was just about to say that. Yep.
It's like, I'm not, buddy, I'm sorry. I'm just not buying it. You're just, I'm kind of on that guy's side. I'm like, I listen, I write everything down and then I take your jizz. And it's really like, just let me do my job. I was kind of on that guy's side.
Right. I guess now, before I give my initial thoughts, we just need to do like a quick 5 minutes on Ryan Phillippe's accent in this, because that was because the first line is, the first like initial line from the two leads is from him, and it's in that accent, and I was like, oh boy, how long is this? Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Like, I love Phillippe as like a kind of curio 90s trying to stick him as a leading man, and it's like, this only worked once, and it worked because Cruel Intentions is so batshit that it works for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just about to say that those lines, not from Phillippe, yes, it does sound like a little kid that's just like, I just learned all of these curse words on the playgrounds. And also McQuarrie also just being like, because his line is terrible, which I'm not going to say, and then Sarah Silverman's like 30 seconds of just stringing together all of these insults and calling him everything, and I'm just like, I don't get what the point of this is, other than he pretty much made it as kind of like a trailer for the movie kind of thing. I think he said something like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's he's definitely, and he's pretty self-deprecating in the commentary. Like, I think he knows there's certain things aren't working, and he doesn't repeat these mistakes later, which is
right.
Good,
Yeah.
Bryden's point about this being a great showcase of how he was as a director. I think this is like a lot of like moments of success. That chase scene where they get out of the car and let it roll down the alley, unbelievable.
That's good. I like
but
that
like,
a
there's
lot.
so many great things in this movie. Del Toro's amazing. Most of the cast amazing. Phillippe, a miscast, and that it's almost not even his fault. Like, it's just, he just has no business being in this movie. He just doesn't.
He's trying.
He's trying.
A little too hard.
He's committing like hell to this movie. He's trying so hard. He's a kid, and he was also trying to get out. He turned down more lucrative projects to do this. And I think he was really trying to like show like, look, I'm not just this pretty boy, but it's like, but you aren't this character. You just aren't this guy. No. This isn't you,
You still have the same haircut from I Know What You Did Last Summer in Cruel Intentions. I can't.
From 3 years ago, sir.
Yeah.
Just one description that like stuck in my mind. I had to look it up it was like from the New York Times review of the movie at the time. They said Phillippe talks as if he had burned the roof of his mouth. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
He has a thing where like he talks like this and he won't really quite open his mouth all the way. Like, he makes sure that his teeth don't move at all. Like, he's constantly gritting his teeth when he talks. Everything he says. It's like, wow, dude, just take it down. And on the opposite side, you have Del Toro, who just is effortlessly like so charismatic and so interesting.
Doesn't even have to try.
It does, and you're just like, oh, I'm so, and it makes it like, why are these two guys together? I don't understand how these guys teamed up in any way.
No, it doesn't make
because they're
any
such an
sense.
odd pairing,
Yeah. My initial thoughts are, I did not like this movie really at all, but it's so wild, because going into it, I'm just like, how can a movie with Phillippe, Del Toro, Lewis, Diggs, Cat, Khan, like,
sure,
it has to be something. But I definitely, the first 2 minutes, I was just like, okay, maybe he's just trying to shock the audience, and then it'll get a little bit better. It didn't really get that much better for me after that, that's for sure. But the chase scene where they stopped the car and they're trying to get Juliette Lewis at the first line, that was really great. And then the ending shootout scene, more so, is just like, I respect it more than I did enjoy watching it, kind of thing, where I'm just like, oh, he did this. Like, I couldn't turn off filmmaker brain while I was watching that, like, because I was just like, it's like more so he's trying to showcase how good he is at shooting action than actually just having a good action scene kind of thing. But yeah, like Brian, what you were saying, like there's too many characters, like where there's too much going on. Also, yeah, like I love Ryan Phillippe, can't deny it. He's really not good in this movie, and he gets the most to talk about. While Del Toro, no matter what he's in, he's always electrifying and whatnot. And then Julia Lewis, who I love, has nothing to do in this whatsoever. And then they try to give her like there's this one scene, like I think it's right after they kidnap her, and I forget what Phillippe asks her or something like that, like, do you want to keep the baby, or what name do you have for it? Do you have to have a name? And she's like, do you know how like blind people haven't seen the sun, or what they would call that? That's kind of how I feel about my baby. And I was like, what?
It's
deaf people.
Deaf people never. That was such a like. I was just like, oh my, this is not a good monologue. This is not a like Jesus.
Yeah. I was like, deaf people still have the same words for the sun. It's the same word as a hearing person uses.
I was like, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah,
I understand you've just been kidnapped and you might not be firing on all cylinders in terms of like, you know,
no, she had that
cognitive
monologue
ability,
in the pack.
but like, yeah, it seemed like it was almost rehearsed on her part, like throughout those 9 months of pregnancy. Like,
right. Yeah, and there's another scene where James Caan, I think, is he's in the house and they're talking about like it's only money or whatnot. He's like $15 million isn't money. Money is what you take to the grocery store. And then he goes into this. I think it's Brian, what you were talking about all the alliteration and whatnot. And I was just like, it's like scenes like that. I can see Christopher McQuarrie typing this out while smiling, and it really annoys me.
Yeah, the line was at the aforementioned art of adjudication. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like cool it just a little bit.
Yeah. God damn, get out of here. Yeah. But I pretty much, did he direct Valkyrie? Did I say that, or did he just?
No,
that's Bryan Singer who directed
Bryan
it.
Singer, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So pretty much, I haven't seen Jack Reacher, but I'm sure I'll love it. But him with the Mission Impossible movies, Rogue Nation and Fallout especially, is just fucking phenomenal. So it has nothing against McQuarrie, because I do love multiple of his other movies, but I think this kind of, even though he has Usual Suspects under his belt, and 5 years later, which Usual Suspects, Bryan Singer excluded, is an amazing movie. And so it's like he knows what he's doing.
Kevin Spacey aside as well.
Yeah, he's also phenomenal in it.
If you can put all those things out of your mind, it's an incredible movie.
Yeah. It's just like, is this movie great? Yes, I have 19 caveats, but yes, yeah. But yeah, it just kind of, this feels like the last gasp of like the Tarantino knockoffs, kind of like it's its own thing eventually, but it still has that kind of, you know, like Suicide Kings and Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead type of thing, where it doesn't try to replicate Tarantino's type of writing style with the pop culture references and the funny characters and whatnot. Phillippe and Del Toro are just never funny or talk about anything other than the assignment and whatnot. But it does feel that like gritty, nihilistic kind of, you know, in your face type of thing, where I was surprised there was not needle drops a la Tarantino and stuff like that. But yeah, didn't have very much good time. But you know what? There's a lot to go on and a lot to talk about, so I am excited to hear what everybody else thinks.
With the needle drop scene, do you think like they spent like most of the music budget on just that one Rolling Stones needle drop at the start with "Rip This Joint"? Like that. I mean, that must have cost a pretty penny.
Yeah. Rolling Stones are famously not good about licensing their stuff, so yeah, I'm sure they were just like, Phillippe, you can come in, but half your salary's going to the Stones. Are you okay with that? And he's just like, I don't care.
How much do they charge for Paint It Black? My gosh, they must charge.
I don't know,
because that's how many times is that used in movies? You know,
I feel like most people probably just use covers at this point, just like in Stir of Echoes.
Yeah. Was the one in Devil's Advocate a cover? I don't remember, and I just rewatched that movie.
Probably, because I do remember, totally off topic, but the Paint It Black and Guitar Hero 3 is also a cover. You know, that's in there somewhere in my brain. Just had to let it out. Anyways, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm pretty much mirroring pretty much what Brydon and Ryan say, although I will admit, the first 15 minutes of this thing, I was just like, I'm going to go jump in front of a cab. Like, I just, like, this is, like, the worst thing I've ever seen. And it wasn't even, like, I was offended. it was so abrasively juvenile where I was just like, oh Jesus Christ, like it just such edgelord bullshit where it was just like it really like I was just like, oh God, if there's another hour and 40 minutes of this bullshit, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then the first set piece happened with Juliette Lewis getting tossed back and forth between people, and then that whole car chase, and I was like, okay, that was pretty rad. And then there are a few lulls, but then James Caan comes in. For my money, James Caan, probably the best character and performance in the movie. I like him a lot. I mean, I always like James Caan, and it feels so effortless as opposed to some other performances, i.e. Phillippe's. I agree with you, Ryan. I spent most of the movie being like, okay, why are Phillippe and Del Toro together? These people would never be friends, and everyone around them is more interesting, even if they don't have that much to do. Yeah, as we mentioned, Phillippe's not good. He's trying, but it falls flat. It kind of bummed me out that Del Toro like is so effortlessly good at this stuff, but he doesn't have a whole lot to do, really. Like, I like the scene with Khan, but it is that thing where it's like, I don't need my characters to be, to sync up with my morals. I think I probably mentioned it on this podcast. Bad Lieutenant by Abel Ferrara is a great movie, and that is one of the most despicable human beings you could spend 2 hours with. Sure. But they're not interesting. They're just kind of like ciphers to get, or MacGuffins to get the plot rolling. I think I completely agree with what Bryden says, that like as a technical accomplishment, it's pretty stunning filmmaking. I mean, the shootout at the brothel at the end I found pretty exhilarating just to watch. Like, I just kind of sat there and was like, I don't really have any investment in anything going on dramatic stakes wise, but this is fun for my lizard brain. Yeah, I had no real investment as to what was going to happen, who ends up killing who, whatever. But once it got to, like, the shootouts and the gore, I did think that was pretty impressive. I mean, we've touched upon it before, but, it did make me feel bad for every woman in this movie is either a victim, a monster, or like both. Like, it's just in terms of the Sarah Silverman character, where it's just like,
or it twists and they go from a victim to a monster.
And they're also described horribly, like, by the characters. And again, not like McQuarrie's saying this is like okay, it's just, it's a little like, I mean, I don't think I'll ever revisit this anytime soon, but I'm glad I saw it because it is kind of an interesting blueprint of what's to come. I have not seen Jack Reacher, but I do like Rogue Nation, Fallout, and yeah, not really an original thought here in these initial thoughts, but that hasn't been said before. But yeah, like, I'm glad I saw it. I had fun. It's nasty and icky and amoral on pretty much every level, but there's some riveting stuff in there aesthetically. So yeah.
Let's get into the plot real quick. I feel like we pretty much already talked about the opening 2 minutes, so I'll just leave that be.
Although I do like the detail that the bar they walk out of is called Dive Bar, just like stripping the genre down to its like barest elements.
Yeah. Where are you guys going tonight? We're going to Dive Bar. Yeah. Parker and Longbow are what house do you say it?
Longbaugh, I think is maybe.
Longbaugh. Microprocessors. Yeah, okay. Parker and Longbar are a pair of low-level petty criminals who fund their existence through unconventional and often illegal means. Wanting to move past petty crime, they vow to get a proverbial big score. While at a sperm donation clinic, the pair overhear a telephone conversation detailing a $1 million payment to a surrogate mother for bearing the child of money launderer Hal Cheddock.
Yeah, like... That is one of those moments, too, where, like, there are moments in this. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm the one with the most positive opinion of this film, but because I really do still kind of love this little Shaggy Dog movie, but that is something that, like, was kind of shocking to see in a Christopher McQuarrie movie, or even in a Christopher McQuarrie script, that the lead characters find out that the inciting incident for these two lead characters is a conversation they overhear and we never see the person that's talking.
Yeah.
I was like, this is really clunky. This is very clunky, but like So
What
yeah,
if they
that's
just happen to be there? Is basically the thing.
Yeah, it's like when they heard that and they start going, I was like, "There's no way this is how this sets up." Yep, sure, okay, yeah, we're here.
I mean,
Okay.
it's something that I'm sure McQuarrie is going like, oh wow, why did I do that? That was it's like you are seeing a lot of like McQuarrie like a manifest, but also learn in the process of this movie, like where he's great at his set pieces, but he's like learning how to construct characters and learning to like rely less on his script. He talks about in the commentary, well, he will like learn a lot more to rely on just actors and creating moments there, which is certainly how he did more of the Mission Impossible movies, but this movie is like clearly overwritten, and that scene actually is oddly not overwritten. It's so underwritten, and it's such a what? We're looking at the magazines. What are they? What's they saying? Like
that was like about the point where I was like, I'm about to check out because they're just reading like it's not even Playboy. It's like I was just like, oh, fuck off. Like I get it. They're unlikable, but this isn't like interesting or anything. Like it's.
He's so angry in this movie, and he's so like, for a guy who won an Academy Award, and he's finally able to make a movie, but he has to make a crime film. God damn it. He seems just so to start just being like, fuck everyone. Fuck
this
everybody
poor guy.
in this movie. And I'm like, calm down and make the movie. And when he does get into the movie and he sort of allows it to happen, it's like, okay, this is but he really puts, 2 middle fingers out to the audience to start. It's really interesting.
I'm all for an angry beginning. I think, the TV game kicked in at the beginning of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is fucking brilliant. But, like, not like we should ever compare these two movies. But, like, I'm fine with a filmmaker being angry.
I got a little Fire Walk with Me vibes from this movie. I'm going to...
They're often played together. And so that's
true.
Great. It's good that you bring it up.
They ate lots of cream corn. Yeah.
Yeah, Blue Rose. Parker and Longbow resolve to kidnap the surrogate Robin, played by Juliette Lewis, but their attempt escalates into a shootout with her bodyguards Jeffers and Obex, which Obex is Nikki Cat and Jeffers is Taye Diggs. Not enough Nikki Cat in this movie. The kidnappers are able to elude the bodyguards who are arrested. Jeffers and Obeck are bailed out and returned to Chittock, whatever, terrible name, by his right-hand man, John Sarno. I forget who.
Joe Sarno, right? Isn't his name Joe?
Yes, Joe Sarno. As Sarno begins coordinating Robin's rescue, Longbow contacts her gynecologist, Dr. Painter, and orders him to a truck stop to examine Robin because she's having, like, contractions and whatnot. After the examination, Painter returns to Chittock and it is revealed that the doctor is Chittock's son. It is also revealed that Jeffers and Chittock's wife are romantically involved. Sorry, the allergy medicine is kicking in. Longbow calls from a motel south of the Mexican border and demands a $15 million ransom. Also, Painter, when he's examining her, like, slips her a cell phone and tries to slip a gun to her, but they find the gun and stuff like that. Also Chittock, the wife. It doesn't say here, it just says Chittock's wife, is like the most, like, just 5 seconds is already playing the most, like, evil person ever on screen, and you can just tell. And then there's for some reason, like, a Persona reference where she's watching the ultrasound and is like touching the screen, and I was like, where does this come from? I was like, it looked cool, it was fine, but I was just like, huh. Okay,
she's also evil because she lounges on the couch and eats shrimp and drinks martinis.
She just cares about the baby, doesn't care about anyone else.
I may be evil, guys. Oh
no.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
And I will also say, this is like my personal weirdness bringing this in. That actress, Kristen Lehman, she had a guest role on the 3rd season of Felicity as, like, someone who gets shot at a party and has an intimate connection with Scott Speedman, who's, like, holding her hand in the hospital. So, like, that was
I can't wait to watch Felicity.
She is also a vegetarian, so she had to eat a lot of shrimp in that scene.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Which McQuarrie talks about, and then he does not mention the fact that he did not give her an out on those shrimp. And he said she had to eat like 75 shrimp that day.
Oh my goodness. That reminds me, go ahead.
No, I was, please, finish your tangent. I want to hear this.
McQuarrie, you don't have to make her do that. I'll strap on a wig and eat the shrimp myself. I don't care.
Yeah. She could also eat it and spit it out, as many people do, when they're eating food, so, like, I don't,
I was gonna say that reminds me of
Maybe
the
she
behind
did.
the scenes.
I don't know.
True. That reminds me of the behind the scenes on Social Network where there's like a 5-second cutaway where one of the brothers is like has a mouthful of hamburger and they did that shot like 30 times, so they go through like 300 fucking burgers.
I know what
like
scene
a
you're
shot-
talking about. That's so funny that they did that so
Yeah.
many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also going to say, one of the other complicated, many convoluted webs in this movie is that the Doctor Painter is Chidduck's son. And,
Yeah.
like, he's been brought in to help out with the surrogate operation because something happened in Baltimore that went down really badly. They're kind of vague about it, but, like, yeah, the relationship between father and son is contentious to say the least, where, like, Cussman is, like, saying to his dad, like, I don't want to do this. And, like, Wilson's just like, I understand. I'm sorry hearing this. You're my son, but this is your bed, too. And Wilson, like, does play the sort of paternal nature, but also the subtle menace of that line reading play very well. But, a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, I didn't know if he needed to be his son. I think you could have held the Baltimore thing, and you don't have to explain what it is. In fact, I love that they don't. It's great. Yeah. Don't tell me what happened in Baltimore, but just know that I saved your ass in Baltimore, and so you're going to do this thing for me.
I don't know.
You know
why.
what I mean? Like,
I don't know why the they're actually related twist is so funny to me when it means absolutely nothing. Just think of Prometheus, where it's like Charlize Theron reveals that Guy Pearce is her father, and it's just I remember being at a midnight screening and no one had the single reaction, just kind of like
I forgot all about that, and I fucking love Prometheus. But yeah, because you're watching it, and the entire time you're like, "Oh, Wayland's an old guy. This is insane," and then they drip that in, and you're like, "Huh? Oh, okay. What were we doing actually?" Yeah. Which they do another twist where it's just like, actually, the painter is the father of the baby, and you're just like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, too many threads with this painter guy. Come on now. Back to what I was saying. Lobar calls from a motel south of the Mexico border and demands a $15 million ransom. I do love this entire set and nighttime and how run down it looks. I really do like that. Jeffers and Obax, tempted by the money, begin forming a plan to save the child and keep the money, where they're saying, they only want the baby, they don't care about Robin, blah, blah, blah. As Longbow hangs up the telephone outside the motel, he is approached by Sorno, who identifies himself as the Bag Man and offers to pay $1 million if they surrender Robin and simply walk away. Longbow, who is clearly skeptical of the offer from the Bag Man, declines the cash offer, but accepts his subsequent offer to get a cup of coffee. Which, really weird, just like, I don't know, they had to have built it, but it's just like this little cafe bar that's just like in the parking lot of this motel.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty cool scene where it's just like he's very obviously, even James Caan can like win this guy over just like for a simple like 15 minutes or whatever. He's like very much respectful of him.
It's their
I love
heat
this
moment.
whole part. Yes, absolutely. A heat moment. I loved this scene though. And I loved this is one of the stronger like world building moments where he's kind of like, we don't trust the Bag Man. You never take the Bag Man's offer. All that kind of stuff where you're kind of like, oh, look at, I'm in this crazy crime world. It really felt like some of the most, well actualized, moments that, he puts together for it. I was, and I love that scene between Del Toro and James Caan.
It is kind of like I did think, like, how amazing would that be if James Caan was like, hey, do you want to just leave this movie and go to another one? like,
sure.
Like, one without Philippi just kind of bringing us down. Like,
and it was, maybe I liked it too, because it is kind of we take a nice break from Philippi,
Yeah.
Who is working hard.
But
he
he and Del Toro have no chemistry. But he and Del Toro have no chemistry, and then Del Toro has that great scene with Khan, and you're just like, yes, this is why they're both great actors.
This is what this has been missing, yeah.
I mean, the most chemistry they have is like during the action scenes when they have like their shorthand with like, the signals and everything, which that's really cool reading. It's like a Navy, McQuarrie's brother is like a Navy SEAL and everything. It's like, but it makes me also wonder, like, so where did these guys like get their like training and everything, like with the tactical stuff, like. Do they maybe have military backgrounds? I mean, that's possible, but like it's
I'm
also
assuming from the way they would call cover and they would go back and forth when they were trying to first kidnap Julia Lewis.
Yes,
that kind of stuff seems like okay. Well, these guys were tactically trained in some way, and I'm gonna assume military, which is why you would have these two sort of disparate guys somehow come together. But yeah,
I just assumed it was in Baltimore. Because everything happens in Baltimore.
But you can see, like, Del Toro has this amazing chemistry with, like, the girl behind the counter in the corner store. And he, like, watches the videotape and smokes a cigarette. And she's, like, super digging on him. And I'm like, that chemistry is very palpable. Yeah. And the scenes between him and Philippi are like, oh, I mean, okay. let's get to more.
Yeah, it feels like he kidnapped Philippi. It was just like, you have to be my sidekick now. And he's like, all right, I don't want to be, but I'm here. Yeah. Longbow returns to his room where Parker and Robin are playing cards. Sorno then returns to Chedek's home to plan the next step. This kind of leaves out the fact that, like, when Longbow comes in, he's just like, what? He kind of has this feeling of like, what are you doing? Like, being cool with Robin and whatnot. Like, what seems to be going on?
There's like, well, that's my criticism of this is they play fucking hearts. And it's and that's supposed to like provide
Charlie,
all
was
the
that on the nose for you? Was that on the nose? Yeah.
Or I was just like, who the fuck plays hearts? Like, Jesus.
Well, it does call back early in the moment because before they go in to kidnap Juliette Lewis, they're playing hearts on the hood of the car. Mm-hmm. So
I thought they were playing a different game.
No, I think they're playing hearts there. So it's kind of like, I guess, their weird criminal thing is that they also then play hearts to pass time.
And then Juliette Lewis just lays out a huge exposition dump for like no reason other than
hell yeah,
as well just say I'm pregnant. Like
yeah.
I'm hormonal. Like yeah.
But I mean, it is another example of like the movie like where it seems like it's like, oh, they're bonding and everything, but then like it's like broken immediately. But like these guys like don't really give a shit about her, or like it's like they're willing to either abandon her or like jeopardize her safety and everything at any moment. I
think it plays as a moment too that where she's trying to get them to have any sort of sympathy for her. I mean, and I think that is, I mean, if you're looking at the plot moves like that's certainly why that scene would continue to exist and not be edited out, because she's trying to make sure that these two guys have any sort of sympathy for her. And I think she keeps trying to have those moments, like when she takes the sandwich and she's trying to like have them think about her as a human being,
Yeah, and I do appreciate that they don't make it into any type of romance at the end.
That would have been ridiculous.
Nor do they even hint at that, but I can imagine this exact same plot where it is like, I have to be there for her and her whatever, bullshit. Mm-hmm. So
that could have been a studio note for sure.
Yeah.
Like, what if the two of them fuck? Like, no, that's just not this movie. That's not what this movie is.
Yeah. That'd be so bad. Yeah, I mean, I guess like the one like generous note I'll give like to maybe give Philippe some credit is like the fact that his character maybe he is like a bastard, but also like his heart is like maybe not quite in this and everything, where like, he does have that whole monologue where he's like talking about like realizing that his time might be running out or whatever. So it's like, and maybe this is like his chance to get out. Sort of like it's like his like the sort of like Del Toro's moment of like reckoning, where it's like being told like this might be your last chance to get away with your life intact or whatever, and like sort of having that moment. So like that's like maybe why like with like him acting tough and everything and the performance, where like you're saying, oh, this seems like a kid who's trying to rough himself up and everything, but it's not convincing. Maybe that's also like part of the character too. But that's maybe a generous read on my part.
Yeah. I think it just was written for a different actor, and and throughout the commentary, McQuarrie's constantly complimenting Philippi on his trigger discipline.
Cool.
So, I mean,
not his acting, not anything else.
He does mention some things that he's like, oh, he really committed hard to this. So, but like, he really committed and he really learned his trigger discipline and really worked hard on trying to do the tactical stuff correctly. It was like, that's very nice, but also like not particularly, I mean, it sounds still like, well, we tried to get this guy in here that we thought might bring in the teens. So,
I mean, if this was the teen movie of the 2000s,
I mean, obviously, yeah, totally.
All the kids were running
Can't Hardly
out.
Wait, that's late 90s. Sorry, but yeah,
Bring It On. That's 2000s.
Yeah, Bring It On.
Same weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were like, Bring It On. Way of the Gun. Bring It On.
They're like, I'll see Bring It On first, and then I'll see Way of the Gun, and they're both gonna be, about me.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say something, now I forget. Jeffers comes to realize that Robin is Sarno's daughter. Jeffers, Obeck, and Painter leave to meet with the kidnaps while Sarnos departs separately with the ransom. At the motel, Parker is having second thoughts as he confers with Longbow outside the motel room. Jesus Christ, the medicine is hitting. Motel room. Robin takes the opportunity to seize a shotgun and barricade herself inside. It was the same shotgun that they had rigged up to the door where if anybody comes in, it would shoot them. This is probably like the only time comedy works in the scene where she shoots out the door and then like Del Toro like peeks in. She's like peekaboo. He's like, like really freaked out. It's pretty funny.
But he's almost kind of impressed too. He's like saying, "Wasn't expecting this," and he's like imitating the way she's like pointing at the guy. It's like, yeah.
Right. And I also, maybe I missed it, but because he says like we need to go back into the room if we're gonna leave because I forgot my jacket, but actually his jacket was on the car. But then as soon as he does that, he pushes Philippi out of the way because he knows that that's gonna happen. And Philippi's like, "Wait, what the fuck? Why are we gonna go back in there?" type of thing. So it's just like nobody can trust anybody, etc. But Lewis is probably the best in the scene because she's actually given something to do, and I think it's really cool. As sirens are heard in the distance, Parker and Longbow hastily escape, and Robin emerges just as the Mexican police arrive, followed by Jeffers, Obeck, and Painter. As Painter and the bodyguards try to persuade Robin to leave with them, the officers pull their gun and order everybody onto the ground. Parker and Longbow open fire from a nearby hilltop, and the shootout leaves the two officers dead and Obeck's wounded. Jeffers shoves Painter and Robin into his car and drives off.
I love that sequence.
I was about to say, like, this is probably another scene that I really liked because whenever the shots do come off, you actually are like, I did think they were really gone, and then all the shots from the scope and whatnot, it like actually had suspense in it.
And like in this movie in somebody else's hands, like he's just gonna be like pew pew, just like immediately picking off every single person. But he's showing like how, look, you can't be an ace on every single shot. He gets some good shots in, and he also misses other people. And I kind of love that, he somewhat succeeds in that scene. And I also love that they ran off and then just decided, let's get the sniper and just start taking over. Like there's a lot that happens that they don't talk about, which I really like. I feel like this movie could have used more of it and it would have been even better. Maybe slightly less talking sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, really good blocking too when like, she's like between like the two, like the police and like the guards and everything, and then like Khan's guy comes in, like he says like, don't do it, like don't pull those guns or whatever, like that's like sort of like the claustrophobia and the framing is like really smart.
He's really good with geography in terms of making sure you know exactly where everyone is.
Yes. Right.
Yes. And in terms of editing that together too, so it actually feels cohesive. And to Juliette Lewis's credit, at least in terms of her character, like I will say every time she's caught in a shootout, it is kind of like, what the fuck am I supposed to do, in a way that I actually find to be believable, and not in a way where she's always screaming and crying. She's genuinely like, I'm being torn by two different people at all times, and because the action is so fluid, it actually makes sense because
I also like the detail that after Nicky Cat gets shot to pieces, you just cut to like the people outside the cafe just watching, and they just like sort of shrug it off and like walk back inside. Just like a sense of like this world is like very corrupted. And that's like one of the few examples of like the movie's kind of the humor like matching up with like the bleakness of like the more serious parts. I feel like that's like where it kind of aligns, like the sensibilities. I would say.
Yeah, but he gets a lot of humor out of like performances. Like I meant when before I was like, comedy's maybe not his thing, is like writing like setups and punchlines. Like that's not McQuarrie's bag.
Have we talked about the Jeffrey Lewis introduction, by the way?
No, this was not really shown up in here. I don't even think he's on this Wikipedia plot.
Which is a shame because he's a great character actor, and I actually think it's not even the writing, because I've seen this scene before, but it's so well played where he's introduced and he's on the couch and like he's about to shoot himself in the head and the phone's ringing and then the gun clicks. Like I love that he actually is gonna be like no, and then the gun clicks and he just kind of has this oh fuck moment.
He still takes a moment to answer the phone.
Yeah,
he's still
just like, well, should I find another way or should I just answer the phone? That is one of the few moments I thought was genuinely funny in this movie.
But again, that's performance. That's his
exactly.
Like, he performs the hell out of that. I know that McQuarrie gave him the setup, of course, but like he just makes that pay off so well.
Yeah,
it's also really funny. I do like the cut when like James Caan's like asking like, oh, are you busy? No, not at all. Are you drunk? A little. And then like but it cuts back to like James Caan and like he has like a long list of people that like he was calling, and like he's crossing all the names, and this is the last guy on the list. It's like this is the last guy that he's calling.
It's a great detail.
Yeah,
it's a great detail. And the end scene between Jeffrey Lewis, where the scene they're actually together and James Caan in the car, and he's been shot where he gets shot here. Trying to save his daughter in real life. And I love that scene. That scene is amazing. And actually a decent job of writing comedy, because McQuarrie talks about how he wanted to write a scene where like you always I think he mentions the quote where like in a death scene, you can't die in a movie and they won't cut away from you until you're actually dead. So like he decided to write the scene where a guy just simply wouldn't die. And he wouldn't go away, which actually I thought it was just, it's a great scene.
I kind of want to be alone. It's actually great.
Great line.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic.
Especially when like Khan has already wanted to get out of the car. He
Yeah.
was already like, okay, pat him on the shoulder, like, see ya, buddy.
Yeah.
And then like he like kept talking, so he didn't. He got back in the car. That's a great beat. That's a great moment right there.
That's why I think his performance and Khan's performances are easily the standouts for me, because they feel so effortless as opposed to,
right.
you know, I'd say Del Toro's feels effortless too, but like he just doesn't have the juicy, you know, character actor moments that are provided for those two veterans, frankly. Yeah.
But there's like a general sense of every person in this movie having like a kind of a world weariness, and like particularly James Caan and Jeffrey Lewis. And I love that element, and Del Toro fits into that just like without just like stepping in front of the camera. And that's the thing about Phillippe that's also tough, because he does not have that.
No.
He just does not seem like a guy who has seen shit in his life. You know, even Juliette Lewis seems like somebody who has gone through shit in her life.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Phillippe just doesn't. He just doesn't.
Yeah, I feel like
mean,
Juliette Lewis often plays characters who have seen terrible
Totally,
shit, actually, which is why that performance works so well. Yeah,
She went through some shit in Christmas Vacation, you know? I mean, some major shit, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, like Ryan Phillippe, just it's so bad. It's just not his. It's not quite his fault. He just should never have been in this role. He just doesn't have that element that everybody else had, and I'm sure he initially thought this would be an older actor. By at least like 10 years of Ryan Phillippe. So
you mentioned Matt Dillon. I could probably see. I mean, Matt Dillon's not an action star by any means, but I could definitely see that being more appropriate.
Which future Crash star would be in this movie?
Okay. All right.
God.
Okay. I said and move on, please. To add to our previous one, if somebody mentions Boat Trip, you have to pay me $10. Same thing goes for Crash. I'm just saying. No talk of either of those.
I will just say I was talking to coworkers about certain things that happened in that movie, and they were like slack-jawed. They were just like, "Wait, this one best
Crash
picture?
or Boat Trip?
Both, but Crash."
Oh, okay.
They're similar plots, aren't they?
I now work with people who are young enough to not have lived through the Crash era, so like when I tell them,
I've never been so
things,
envious.
Yeah,
wow.
When I tell them certain lines and things that happen in that movie, they're like, "You can't be serious." I'm like, "No, I'm 100% serious." Like
they're like, wait, all these amazing actors in it can't be bad. It's just like, it is. It's just like Sandra Bullock's in it. It can't be bad. She's the worst. I just, oh my god,
that character is kind of in this movie. To be perfectly honest, her character in that is kind of here.
Yeah,
in a much smaller and a more bite-sized kind of sized role, but.
Okay, not derailing this to do Crash. The unfortunate thing about Crash is I could talk about it for hours, but it would take days off of my life if I did.
Every time you mention Crash, you lose 2 years of your life.
Yeah,
you would be waves of gun level vitriol. You would be like spewing its way. Crash. That was my Jack Nicholson announcing
watching
Best
that on
Picture.
live television.
Wow. No, I watched it on live motherfucker. I said get off this topic. I watched it live on television, and I was so young that I loved both Brokeback Mountain and Crash. So when Crash won, I was just like, I thought it was going to be Brokeback Mountain. This also rules. And then I grew up because I was like 12. Anyways, back to the plot. Parker and Longbow torture Obex to learn Robin's location, while Jeffers confines Robin in a room in a Mexican brothel. Jeffers forces Painter to perform a C-section to retrieve the baby, despite Robin's confession that the child is hers and Painter's and not Chuddock's. Meanwhile, the heavily armed Parker and Longbow infiltrate the brothel. The ensuing gun battle, which leaves Parker wounded, turns into another standoff until Painter shoots Jeffers. Wild scene that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
outside.
This
so
whole sequence is just awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, this rules. Like, I was kind of like, this movie's kind of losing me. And then the scene before that, what we
man.
talked about with the motel, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna go to. Oh shit, nope. Yep. Okay. Aces.
Yeah, it kills it in the action parts of it, and he really like set up the end fight with his brother, and they used like little cowboys and Indians, and they had like a little, and they storyboarded it precisely how they were going to shoot that end fight scene, and
it feels
what a
elaborately. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it feels so. It feels so elaborately choreographed. Yeah. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything important.
But it's
No,
also
I,
good.
I interrupted Ryan, and now I interrupted Brian.
Oh.
So
Interrupt everybody.
One of the things I was gonna say too is I also like. I mean, we're talking about how Del Toro, like, a lot of it, he doesn't need dialogue to sort of get his emotional beats across. But like when like he's witnessing the birth of the baby, that's like that almost like seems like it breaks through to him, and like the movie like just focuses on him, like his eyes are sort of darting to Lewis off screen. But then like Philippe calls out to him, he says like, "Come on, brother, we gotta go," and everything. And it's like, again, movie pulling us back from like this guy could like have a path where like maybe he is like living a normal life, but he decides to make the wrong choice every time. He just decides, well, guess I'm going out this way. Might as well like go into blaze and everything. And it's so good. But Del Toro plays that so well. And it's like just like the shot says like all the words you need.
Yeah. Also, the part where Ryan Phillippe jumps over the thing and lands in all the bottles and whatnot. Apparently, like that had like, I don't know, probably Budweiser labels or whatever, and then the companies were like, "You can't do that because you're using our bottles as weapons." And I was like, "As weapons?
oh please,
It's accidental weapons.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I take my dogs for a walk like down the street. I see shit like that everywhere, and I'm like,
I know. Like if somebody like broke it and was shanking somebody with it, it's like, yeah, that's saying that you can use our bottles as a weapon. But it's just like nobody is not saying if you fall on a broken bottle, it's not going to hurt. Like it's just like we want our bottles to be safe, and it's just like, no, if you fall on them, it's gonna fucking hurt. Phillippe showed us
that moment comes out of McQuarrie was explained that movie when they leave the room, I believe somewhere around where they leave the room, Phillippe decided to take his jacket off, and that was a decision that Phillippe made. And he basically thanks him for it because then when he jumps into the fountain and there's the broken glass, they're able to really have it all around his arms, which came out of the fact that Phillippe decided, I'm not going to take my jacket with me. Meanwhile, Del Toro was like, I'm going to keep my jacket on through this whole thing. And he keeps the jacket on through the end. But it is such a great moment. I love that moment where he jumps in, thinks he's clear, and then just gets all that glass in him. It's terrific.
I was gonna say I also like the ways that they have to like sort of alter the way they're shooting. Where like Philippe, his arm is fucked, so he has to like reload like one handed, like pulling the medics out with his teeth, and like reloading it, and then like Del Toro's like loading his pistol between like his legs and everything. There's like just smeared blood on his white pants. It's like just like the detail of like those details, and also like the vulnerability too of like just like how much longer can these guys stay alive during this shootout, even as they're increasingly immobilized. Yeah.
It is funny too. I mean, yeah, Bryden, you mentioned that in the opening too. Like, I will admit, when you heard the moan after he jumps in there, I started laughing because I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny slapstick comedy, and then it cuts, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But like, it's funny how like I can be like awesome when people get like Taye Diggs literally gets like his like head blown off and then be like, that rules, but then like broken glass in an arm, I'm like, oh god, no, like Jesus. Like it's
yeah, I think it's the thing of like you don't know what a bullet to the head feels like, but you have been cut by a glass and you know what that feels like, so you can be like, I can feel that.
And it's so drawn out too. That's the thing with like Philippe like gagging, and she's like trying not to fall the glass.
Well, it'd be one thing if you got like one piece of a bottle stuck in you, you'd be like, oh no, but he had so many pieces in his arm. You're just like, oh my god, oh no. And then it's a great moment.
Yeah, I know. My stupid brain is just like, oh, that's gonna be so infected, and like you don't know where that's been. Like,
right, totally. You gotta keep those. You gotta keep those pieces in too until you can get some bandages nearby, something to put on. Because you pull them out, it's just gonna get. You're just gonna bleed out even worse. So.
Yeah.
So
One paragraph left of the plot. Pretty much just the firefight of the brothel is the entire ending. But outside, Sarnos arrives with a group of men and the ransom, which they stack in the courtyard.
I love his old man like army that he brings
Yes.
with him. That was
Oh, yeah.
terrific, man. All of the dudes that Joe Sarno knows are his age.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was so great.
Parker wants to kidnap Robin and Painter again, but Longbow, guilt-tripping after seeing her condition, responds she's had enough. Despite realizing that the money is bait, Parker and Longbow charge headstrong into an ambush. All of Sorno's men are killed in the ensuing firefight. However, Sorno's manages to shoot and cripple the already wounded Parker and Longbow and then calls for an ambulance. Painter emerges with Robin and the baby. Lying in a pool of blood, Parker and Longbow call out to Sorno, informing him that the baby is in fact Robin and Painter's, and thus Sorno's grandson. Parker wonders aloud if this fact will influence Sorno's to let them keep the baby. Robin and the baby are then taken away in an ambulance with Painter, Sorno, and the money, leaving Parker and Longbow to die. Days later, Chuddock's wife reveals she is pregnant. In Finn.
Yeah. And one of those guys, by the way, all of Sorno's guys taken out, one of them shot in the dick. So
Yeah.
Okay. Now I like this movie.
Well, I also love too, like, I mean, the fact that Khan like doesn't like immediate, like he doesn't like just fatally shoot them. He shoots them in the legs that like, you know, Philippe's like crushed by the money and everything that's on top of him. And then like when he's dragging the money away, you can hear like he like Khan like bumps like I think Benicio del Toro in the leg, and you can hear him go like, "Argh!" Like it's just like so like not caring for their pain, which is like just like ruthless.
I loved how they got shot in the legs. Unfortunately, I did not care for their voiceover monologue where I was like, "No, shut up, you're dead." Like,
yeah.
Or I was just like, "I don't give a shit. You're like you're gone."
Yeah, because there's also a line where they're talking about like how much does $15 million weigh, and they're just like, I don't know, like 400 pounds or 4,000 pounds or something like that, and. Don't think that's true, but when they're trying to get rid or when they're trying to run away, when Phillippe has it like on his back, he's like acting like he has like 5 tons on his back, so he's really playing that up. Are you trying to disprove me?
There was an interview that McQuarrie gave where he's I think like he found out $15 million would weigh roughly 375 pounds if it was all in hundreds. So that's something they didn't put thought into.
And they put thought into it because Del Toro asked. He was like, how much would this cost in different denominations, and which I think flustered McQuarrie, but like they had to look it up and go, how much realistically would this all weigh and stuff. So leave it to Del Toro to do all those details. That last paragraph too of the plot synopsis, we've talked a little bit about how he's overwritten or he's had some moments, but that end, they overwrote that last paragraph. It ends a lot simpler than it sounds. That synopsis really like goes through every single touch of those details. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Also the
end.
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Oh, I was just gonna say about the ending. Like, she says she's pregnant, and like she says pregnant, and it cuts to credits. Like both this and Made, like almost feel like mid sentence cut to credits. Like when that happened, I was like, oh, nope. We're out of here. Okay.
It is very interesting to me because it's like obviously we're not supposed to care about her being pregnant for her character's sake, but just to know like Juliette Lewis is safe. I thought that was kind of an interesting choice, just to be like, okay, they won't care anymore. She's got another baby on the way. Like, well,
I felt like it was more like that she was pregnant because she had been sleeping with one of his bodyguards.
With Taye Diggs.
So and like that moment, like if she has the baby, it's probably not his, and it's, you know what I mean, and it's probably gonna.
Oh well, that too.
You know,
yeah.
so it because as an ending note, it's like, why even bother? Like, who cares? But I think it's to say like everyone's not going to end up happy. Like, no, like even if by having the baby, it's still probably not going to go.
She doesn't seem like she'll care though.
She won't care, but will he? You know what I mean? Will Scott Wilson? So
yeah,
you know.
And the other thing too, like that, like, you know, they were having the whole reason Lewis is in this movie, that her character is involved in this, is that like they're using her as like a surrogate because I guess they couldn't have their own children or whatever. But then it's like she's able to have her own baby. It's like, so like all this bloodshed turned out to be for nothing. It's like she could have just had another kid. You know, I mean, it's kind of like an extra bleak joke to end the movie on. Yeah, it's.
Well, that's the funny thing about this movie is that honestly, almost the entire movie could have been avoided.
Oh yeah, everything could have.
Definitely could have. Like a couple smart choices here and there. They really could have pulled this out.
And the one reasonable, humane character is or most humane, I guess we should say, is James Caan, who just kind of walks into the final shootout being like, all right, I guess this is how it's going to go down. Like, you know, like, he's seen this so many times before, and it's just kind of like, okay. Like,
that's to me why I think he's like kind of the hero of the film, because it ends up like he mentions to Del Toro earlier that he's like, you got to be thinking about the future. And he's like, well, do you have, something going on? He's like, well, my daughter's working something out. And he ends up with all the money, and his daughter, of course, is the one having this baby to make all this money. And so he's, like he ends up with all that cash. So, I mean, like he ends up the victor in all this,
Mm-hmm.
So like, to me, it's kind of like, oh, well, James Caan wins this movie,
in multiple ways. Yeah.
Sounds like that should have been McQuarrie's answer for the hero of the movie.
It seems like that. Instead, it's Painter, which, by the way, I'm hearing the story secondhand, but my the theater that I would belong to, the artistic director told me that when Dylan Kussman was shooting it, he told him that in that scene with Caan where he had him up against the wall, he kept thinking, Sonny's mad at me.
Oh, that's good.
So, yeah. Also, by the way, just one last thing: the score. Love the score of this movie from Joe Kramer, who works with McQuarrie on a bunch of things afterwards as well,
right?
Including one of the Mission Impossible movies. And I just love the score to this. I think it adds like a real spine to it, and I think it's like really propulsive. It has that sort of like '90s thriller vibe, even though I know this is kind of more of a '70s influenced film. But it just gives this sense of like something's happening, something's going down. We're gonna get into something. I love that that score. It's just terrific.
All the drum rolls and the clinking, like sort
of. That part. Yes, I love that. Yeah.
It is always interesting watching movies like this. I guess this is more of a broad thing, but whenever we watch a movie from 2000, 1990, 1980, 1970, where you're just like, okay, I know this is a 2000s movie, but you're right. It does feel like a 90s thing where it's like you're still transitioning into the new decade, and this does kind of feel very much both of these kind of hybrid. I know it's just happens to be whenever it came out. It's coincidental, but it is also, I think that's... something that can be said about a lot of movies we cover that have come out, because we've done more movies that have come out in 2000. So
well, it certainly was shot in like probably 99.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And written in the late 90s. So like I'm sure it has that. It's definitely got a little bit of that 90s on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm reading here, I did not know this before, but apparently McQuarrie spent years as a script doctor while trying to get financing for a biopic of Alexander the Great, which that would have been a wild follow-up to Usual Suspects. This seems more appropriate, but that's just wild.
I can imagine Oliver Stone giving him a lot of crap for a movie that would end up being terrible.
Yeah. It looks like it was for Warner Brothers, so it looks like they held on to that until like 2005, whenever that came out. So
we'll see what if he goes back to something like that once he finishes the next two Mission Impossible movies. Because, I mean, I feel like at that point, he can go do whatever he wants.
I don't think McQuarrie is going to be able to do anything until Tom Cruise dies. Or he dies.
By the looks of the stuff on set, I mean, it might be sooner rather than later.
It's interesting in that this movie, too, is like a sign of like how he's really was Benicio del Toro's guy.
Yeah.
And then switches
Valkyrie,
switches over to Tom Cruise at some point.
Another thing about Del Toro is that Traffic came out this was October. Traffic came out in December, and then he won an Oscar a few months later. But it does feel like an undisputably of course that's a Benicio del Toro role, because also Usual Suspects, Snatch,
Snatch.
I'll take this over Snatch. And I kind of had that thing where I'm like, oh. I know.
I don't remember it really.
I watched a bunch of Guy Ritchie movies. He's just not for me. I know that he has his defenders, maybe, and to be fair, I watched most of them.
We respect King Arthur in this household. Come on now. We all remember that, okay?
He's
what was his last movie?
Stylistic.
Aladdin.
Yeah.
Aladdin,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
I couldn't help but think of Sicario a lot watching this, also because,
of course,
the whole showdown at the end, but Del Toro is so good at being so cool in those moments of action and with playing characters with militaristic precision when it comes to stuff like this. Yeah.
One other thing I want to say about McQuarrie is that there was a 2000 interview from around the time Way of the Gun was coming out where he talked about like future projects he was working on, and one of them was the Green Hornet, which I guess that was a bullet he dodged as he was trying to get his career back for the next 12 years. Yeah.
Look, Michel Gondry, I love him to death, but that is a bad movie.
I mean, Michel Gondry got to eat. I mean,
yeah, man.
Oh yeah, I know.
He wasn't making money off of what is it, The Sound of Sleep or whatever. He's got to do Green Hornet.
The Science of Sleep, the Sound
Science
of Sleep,
What?
The Science of Sleep, The We in the Eye, Be Kind Rewind. Yeah.
Sure. Wrapping up here, does anybody have any final thoughts on The Way of the Gun? Not Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai, but The Way of the Gun.
I'll just say that I think that McQuarrie has had a small filmography, but a pretty good one and a pretty solid one. And it's really, I think this is still a really interesting movie in terms of watching an artist sort of figure out what he's going to do. And he takes a long break, obviously. This movie stopped him from being able to direct other movies. And yet the problem is the movie's pretty well directed. He ends up becoming this fixer for scripts, a script fixer, essentially. And he works for that in many years until he starts writing movies for Tom Cruise. I think this is really kind of an interesting piece if you want to look at it like an artist's progression. And I just really, what works in this movie, I think works fantastically. And there's moments that don't work that you're just like, wow, I cannot believe this is a Christopher McQuarrie movie. But totally dig it. And I lastly love that Nicky Katt cannot play a character that doesn't have a massive chip on his shoulder. And whatever movie he's in. And I think this one he's supposed to be so clean cut and just like, and he still looks like a guy's like, fucking hate everyone. I just want to kick everyone's butt. Raleigh probably should have switched out him and Philippi. I don't know. Just saying. But
yes,
now that I think of it.
Sure,
That would have been
sure.
awesome.
Could have been
Nicky Katt, if you would be like, oh, who would be great in this? Put Nicky Katt in it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It could be a 1800s European drama. I don't care. Put Nicky Katt in there.
I mean, you want a guy in. If you have an actor who can take a small role and make it something that you just like don't forget, like you want to put that guy in something, like
him and the Limey, I think about all the time.
Totally,
he's
an
amazing
assassin
heat
when he
check
comes
movie.
into different films and just does small roles. He just fucking kills it,
Yeah,
he's great.
This is the Nicky Katt podcast. Now we're gonna talk about.
I'm just trying to talk you off this Ryan Philippi island that you're living on. Maybe you should go live on Nicky Katt Island. I don't know.
I own property on both islands. It's
That's
fine.
good. That's all right. Yeah. Live on one, vacation in the other.
I would. Okay, this is the new Marry Fuck Kill. I would live on Nicky Katt Island. I would visit Ryan
There you
Philippi
go.
just for a fun summer. Yeah. Anyway.
Sure. Why not?
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.